when I first heard of Barber in the 40s, when I was told that it was the discourses were given to me through the Sufi Society. It doesn't matter, but the thing is that I'm not quite sure who said it to me, but I was told that that there is one God, and that one God appears from time to time. And he was at one time Jesus, and then Muhammad, and now he's Barber. And I said, yeah. All I can say is that it was completely logical. You know what I mean? I didn't feel anything. It wasn't that I had a revelation and, oh man, that's fantastic. No, I thought, yeah, okay. Well, that means that, and it's the one thing I can remember so clearly, that means I love and serve him. And it's been the subsequent 70 years to this point has been indeed wonderful. I've loved it, and yet at the same time, there's no two ways about it. It's not always been comfortable, and that everything associated with Barber, right from the very beginning, has been one of moments of joy, moments of deep meaning, being quite moved at times, and yet at the same time, so frequently a headache. For example, Barber gave me the responsibility of getting the Australians to him in really.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
That's okay.
I was responsible for getting the Australians there, and of course it was so wonderful. Barber insisted that, although I had no money at the time, that myself and the family come, and so fortunately we were able to borrow the money, and the joy of seeing Barber again after 4 years, wonderful. And then first of all, it was the headache of Barber insisted that we get back on a certain ship, a certain on the ship that would be the nearest to the time when the period of East-West Gang would be finished. First of all, it was the headache. I had to constantly go to the Cook's travel agent to inquire about the ship, or was it to the P&O office? I've forgotten now. But it was only at the last minute, really miraculously, that 23 or 25, whatever the people were, berths became available. Okay. That's fine. So we they were first to go there. We were flown over. We went by air, and then we were coming back by ship. Okay, so the air was all right until they got to Colombo or Ceylon, whatever, Sri Lanka. Whatever it be, and China invades India. The flight is immediately cancelled, and there they are, 25 or something people stranded in Colombo, and I'm already in I'm already in Bombay waiting to welcome them in the plane. So of course I ring anyway. To shorten the story is that I went without sleep for 2 nights in the process under orders from Baba to get them to Guru Prasad to be with him, and the joy of actually having one party came and I stayed awake to make sure they got the early train, in the morning, and the joy of taking them there and introducing them to Baba in the afternoon. The details don't matter, but it's so interesting the sort of the headaches that Baba created for me and the joy. Sort of it alternated. The joy of getting the first half of them there, and then the second half I had to go back to Bombay under orders from Baba, and the train during the night, and I get there at 5 a.m. and they finally got onto a ship so I go there and the joy of, oh well, at least they're there in Bombay, and I'm sitting this again, it was sort of typical with Baba, was that we're sitting round this round table on board the ship having breakfast. I thought, well, they've got to go through customs by the time we get the luggage and through customs. It doesn't look as if we'll get the 9 o'clock train. And we're in the middle of breakfast, and it was so literally that Baba gave me a kick. It happened a few times, and I really got up. Right, we go, and I forced through the customs, and loaded everything onto 2 taxis, and we got there, and one of the other young Australian lovers and myself were loading luggage into the train as it was steaming out. It was already leaving, and we were shoving in the last. And okay, and the joy of, oh, thank God we've got on the train for Pune and Guru Prasad and Baba. Okay, and then I can recall the joy of we arrive and the platform is cleared, and the group is 11 of them, including my own family, filing before Baba and being embraced, and I'm at the end watching this sort of the completion of my task, and I think, oh, it's so wonderful, and Baba, patted the children and caressed their faces and the whole crew, and I'm so pleased, and I get to Baba and I think he's going to, embrace me. And instead he points like that. And I thought, oh, he wants me to get down. So I went down, and Erich was not there with Baba at that point. And I'm down, I've got my head down there on his feet. I went full length just to show I was, And I thought, oh, I suppose I better get up. There was silence. There was nothing happening. So I got up, and Baba again looked at me and went like this. And then I addressed the 2 each, the Maharani on one side and this yogi, great orator on the other, but they both knew English, and I said, yes, we're from Australia, from down under.
He's from down.
And Barbara beamed at me. How I knew, heaven only knows, is not. I wasn't accustomed to referring to Australia as being down under. And that was sort of typical of life with Barbara over these 70 years. It's been such an incredible joy. The delights that I've had and the headaches I've had. And I can so understand, in my little way, in sort of such a lesser extent, but I can well understand Eric saying, my life was nothing but harassment and frustration. and yet at the same time, when you look back, you think, what a blessing, what a blessing. And I'm sure that applies to all of us, all Barbara lovers, because all we have to say to Barbara is, Barbara, I love you, and I'd like to, I'd like to be with you, to serve you, to do something for you, and whatever. And Mum was, oh, good. Well, contest for a start. And so you have. That was an incident that. What was it? Yes. That's right. In '67. It was so wonderful, the thought of being with Barbara again, and all I thought about was the joy of getting there. So I get to Bombay, and all of a sudden, I'm in Bombay, and the night before I'm due to then travel up to Pune, to Guru Prasad, where Barbara was. No, to Marizad. Pune first, and then Marizad. And I'm awake for hours thinking, oh dear, I'm going to be living with him for 2 weeks. Oh heavens. What I knew somehow this meant something more than a nice darshan program, just being with Barbara and listening, and he's up there on the stage, and I think, and I'm sort of so concerned. And then I finally fall asleep, and I wake up and I'm completely forgotten. All I can think of is, oh, how wonderful that I'm going to see him now, and I'll be with him. And what a perfect 2 weeks it was. My God, I didn't want anything else. There was nothing else existent, but that Marizad and Barbara's atmosphere. I don't know what to say other than it was as though there was nothing else but that. And the joy that Barbara, during those 2 weeks, emphasising to me not only to work harder on spreading his name and message, but to develop Avatar's Abode as a place of world pilgrimage. I was thrilled. I thought, now this is good, This is now we're getting serious. And the joy, and it's only now that I can in a sense interpret Barbara's gesture as I finally at the end I bowed down to him in farewell after the 2 weeks. And as an incidental, it's so interesting. I had that absolutely conviction that all I was doing was saying goodbye temporarily. That I was going to carry out this wonderful task that he'd given me to develop a 100-acre property, you know, for him. Oh, I loved it. And I'd be just going round the corner, carrying it out, doing it, and I'd be back with him and he'd give me a pat on the back, I hope. But that look that he gave me was so kindly, loving, and sort of, in a funny way, amused that I was so tickled at this task, as though little does he know what's in store for him. It's funny, but I can still see his face, a slight smile. I mean, it was such a loving, kindly. I mean, not only father, but everything else. You know, whatever father implied, he was that. And okay, so when I finally had the money, because of Barbara, as you know, I've said it often, but always, it's so beautiful the way Barbara handled things and brings about results. You all would know it. You all have experienced in various ways of the astonishing story of how you came to Barbara, how the whole thing unfolded. And in this case, I just said yes, Barbara, when he said, in effect, develop, advertise, abide. Fine, that's all that I wanted to hear. It never occurred to me, where's the money coming from? There was no money in Australia. And just as casually, a few days later, after emphasising, get serious about this, Barbara looks at me and says, if you ever need money, come to me and I will see to it. And I honestly, it went through my mind, how nice, sort of like a kindly father, sort of, if you've got a medical expense or a dental or something, I'll help you out. I've never dreamed of approaching him. I've always sort of felt that you struggle. It's sort of like, a case of the famous saying, trust God and tie the camel's leg. Yeah. I mean, that's what Barbara wants us to work. And how wonderful it is to work for him. How wonderful. And yet at the same time, trust him, because it's all in his hands. And that was one of the lessons that I've had to gradually learn. I was so serious about it, as though the thing depended on me. And you sort of remember that balance of do the very best and leave it to him. That's all you've got to do, is be serious, be earnest, be sincere in what we do, because there's no question that the result of whatever one's life is written. It's according to his will. It's there. And so, now what was I? Yes, that's right. And okay, when I finally got the money, Barbara created a business. I'd never been in business, but I suddenly found myself with a business and money coming in. I thought I loved it because if I went into it in the beginning with the young people only with that idea that, oh, well, you never know, coming together, making leather belts, jewellery, this sort of thing. If it earns a bit of money, it goes into Advertise Abode. which was always constantly my goal, right from the moment of that 67 time. And finally, when I got to Advertise Abode with money and the development, and then it sort of well, for various reasons, it stopped. I no longer had the opportunity of continuing what I had started doing. Doesn't matter what, but it was such a shock that I could no longer carry it out. And okay, that episode of finding that people somehow didn't, Baba lovers didn't accept the idea of me continuing my work of directing what should be done. That was, all I can say is that now, nearly 40 years ago, or 35 to 40, something like that. Whatever it is, what a blessing it was from Baba. It was such a shock that how could this happen? I mean, it was so clear as far as I was concerned, what Baba had said. You know, Francis had Advertise Abode over, and Bill, you know, the words that I wasn't going to go into this, but never mind, to finish the task. It was so, the theme in 67, right in the beginning, was Baba. The first things I can remember so clearly, going in for the first morning at 8 a.m, we went in before 8 a.m. to await Baba's arrival in Mundley Hall, and then watching, and I even then I felt included. As I've said before, the men Mundley, of course, I was with on the men's side, and each of them were so welcoming, so naturally loving, and kindly in their welcome, and yet at the same time their one focus was Baba. Yes, good, okay, Baba has said, be here, and they said, okay, then fine, and they welcomed me. But it was a reflection of Baba's own, what I call loving complete indifference. He's loving, and at the same time, sort of go out, pursue what is your fundamental role, and that is to realise who you really are, not male, a man, this condition, that, and so forth and so on. Return to what you really are, and then Baba sitting down, and then with it's sort of an almost unseen gesture. At the same time, when he sat, then we sat down, the men and myself. What I'm trying to convey is the joy that Barbara conveyed in giving me directions and as it were tasks that I can ways that means I can serve him, which was such a joy to me, and yet at the same time create such a headache. and so and that was, and yet at the same time he helped me in various ways. There was the episode in 1954 when he had me to spend half hours at midnight in the dome, as it was called in those days, and what an impact the atmosphere of that dome and the total utter blankness of the blackness, no chink of light, no sound, nothing. What an impact that had. And Barbara saying, fear means no love. And it wasn't physical fear. I realised gradually, I'm slow, but it took me time to realise what it really meant, and that is what I feel very much is that the fear of letting go of the security blanket that one has in one's ego, one image of oneself. I'm this and I'm that, and yes, I'm good at this, and all right, I'm not so good at that, but it's me, and all of a sudden, the question comes up: do I love Barbara more than I love myself? And that letting go of oneself and acknowledging Barbara's will, and that for example, let it be some aspect of oneself that one treasures, that one has been proud of, or whether it involves people, and the total acceptance, not just intellectually, but the real acceptance of the fact that each has their own path to God, and not one of us can point the finger at any other person and say, you shouldn't have done that, or how dare you do this to me or say this to me, and what have you. It has nothing. Okay, as you know, it's a big subject. All you can say is that everything we do, our thoughts, our words, our actions, whether thoughts or feelings or ideas and any form of activity, is solely between oneself and God, nothing else, one to one, and that each one of us is in that position, that there is nothing but God, and that whatever we regard ourselves as, that those, what I call myself is what's stopping me from realizing totally who I really am, the truth. And how loving Baba is, how he leads one to according to what one is able to cope with. He never takes one beyond what one is able to sustain. But at the same time, he's also, as it were, keep trying to carry out what I'd like you to do. Live in a way that pleases me, that makes me smile within, and how difficult it is to let go. What was it? One of those favourite sayings of Adi Senior, wasn't it? Let go, give in, give up and give in. Anyway, whatever. But how, and then if one is able to do, even imperfectly as it may be, but the unseen smile that Baba gives when one's able to let go, as I say, even imperfectly, but even if it's a little, and how one discovers that somehow the effect of whatever one has given up, the hurt that contained, the loss of pride, the loss of apparent rightness, whatever it be, how it somehow it doesn't matter so much. There's a lessening of the pressure. As it says in the discourse, a growing of detachment. That, sort of like you again. I've had you before. All right, okay, well, I'll cope with this again. I'm letting go. I don't know what I intended to do in the beginning was to go back over, think of the joys of the various occasions that I had with Baba over these. I was with him in a period of 13 years where I was, it was only 5 times, but I was associated with Baba over that period, and when I review the joys and the how would you say, little awakenings that have occurred, but and there's so many with regard to 54. One of the occasions that often come to mind was when Baba had Qawwali records played, Indian records of songs of love for God, and how I had no idea except the words that Baba he gave interpretation from time to time, but that voice, whatever it was, I felt very deeply moved. And then when we got back to Bombay waiting for the ship, I spent hours trying to find a bookshop that I could buy those records. I would have loved to handle again. It didn't, somehow it didn't matter, and that still affects me when I hear Indian songs of love for Baba, particularly Madhusudan songs, and how wonderful they are, but not only moments of joy with Baba, the time when Baba stopped the discourse. See, I was so earnest about it in the beginning. I thought, everything had to be studied, and all I knew was right. I mean, well, okay, Baba is God. Well, I mean, you really got to get serious about this. And of course, I told you how I had notebooks and I wrote everything down that Baba gave. I was so serious about it. God, why didn't I just enjoy looking at him? But I still remember the particular occasion when he stopped the discourse, and I stopped writing down what Erich had dictated, and I can remember Baba stopping and just looking, going, his head leaning to the side like this, and him looking down, and the beauty of that face, and the incredible depth of sadness in the eyes. Whatever it was, I didn't know what it was, but boy oh boy, it really hit me, and I spontaneously, it just came in mind, oh Baba, stay like that so that I can continue. I was so deeply moved by his face, and Baba just so naturally straightened up and said, let's stop the discourse. Again, in a very natural, casual, as it were, casual, just look at me for 5 minutes. And then went back to that position. And what it meant to me, and how I felt so deeply as I had felt at any point up to from the moment when I first saw Baba getting out of the car in '54. So deeply did it move me, and the words that came to me, he was like one homeless, and all he was seeking was a home in each heart. Yeah. 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 And then wonderful occasions like in '67 when I was walking alongside him, he was being carried, Baba was being carried back in his chair by the 4 Indian boys back to the veranda of the house, and how I can remember so vividly now in my mind the moment in the garden where Baba suddenly gestured and Erich walking on the other side. Baba was on my right being carried, and Baba gestured, Bill, I'm God 100%. And then repeated it twice. And then the boys carrying the chair up on the veranda, and I can remember it being that they put it down so that it was in line with the door, where of course Mayra would come out, as you've seen in the films, would come out and escort Baba back, help him walk back, and how we all then gestured to Baba. I was last, and how I can remember standing in front of Baba, you know, in front of the chair to bow down to him, and Baba suddenly, so strongly, so emphatically gestured like this a number of times, and the others had departed. I was alone with Baba, and yet those gestures were so clear. Be brave, be big-hearted, go forth, be active in my love. It was so clear, and again, one of those moments that was so moving and at the same time so supportive. And when things get a bit difficult, as they do for all of us from time to time, it's unfortunate to have that image. But Baba says it to all of us in his own way. He conveys that, you know, in the dreams or the visions we have, or the moments of clear realization of what Baba means to us, how he is with us. So always, it's a matter of us being with him, turning to him, remembering him, and how comforting that his presence is in whatever way he has of being with us.
When you first met Baba in '54, that was your first time, and you had gone to, I believe, in his darsham at Wadia Park.
Yes.
And so could you kind of describe those maybe first moments or hour in you towards Baba?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, again, it's interesting how, on the one hand, I felt travelling in the bus with the other 17 Baba lovers who had responded to Baba's call to be with him over those 3 weeks. I can remember how, in one way, the isolation that I felt, that everyone was talking about, they'd all met Baba except the other young Australian, myself, John Valentine. and they all talked about the experiences, their spiritual experiences, to sum up, and how I hadn't had any spiritual experiences. I didn't even know quite what that meant. It was, I had to confess, I mean, I shouldn't have done it, but I can remember dear Darwin, talking about awakening the chakras. And I was intrigued, and I said to him at one time, where are they? I'd like to have them awakened too. I think that sounds intriguing. I shouldn't have done it, and I still don't know what they are.
And Schenectady.
Well, but at the same time, I can remember the sort of impending joy that I felt when the bus finally arrived in the darkness of Maribad, and we got down at the railway lines and we walked up that path that leads up to the retreat and the samadhi. What a wonderful path. Yeah. And, you know, and again, so sort of how much I loved being there in 54, and in the beginning, that first day when we were with him and he arrived, and how much it meant at the same time, it wasn't, I didn't actually feel anything other than, there was no question in my mind that I was his. I was there to, as I put it then, to thoroughly study what he has to give us in the form of discourses and messages. I mean, this is serious stuff. PhDs are nothing. This is beyond that. And then just sitting there and sort of being vaguely aware that there was talking going on. I could see Baba, as I've said, you know, they provided chairs because of the oldies. In an arc behind Baba on that platform, and Baba's chair there, and sort of speeches going on, and women singing things, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it was there, but nothing. All of a sudden, it was only. And it's funny, I mean, why, I don't know. All of a sudden, I was suddenly strongly aware of Baba's pigtail, which I could see tucked into his collar. And at that instant, it's so strange when you think of it. Whether it's got anything to do with me sort of looking, I don't know. But at that point, that I was, that pigtail. And Baba at that same instant turned and obviously looked at each one. It was the first time he'd actually paid any attention to the 18 of us, 18 men that had come. And what I remember of that was, yes, he looked obviously on my left, and then he looked at me. And that was obviously the moment of my meeting with Baba. All I know is that those eyes were like two shafts. His eyes went into me, went in and went in as though there was nothing there inside. And I was pinned back, I was pinned. And I felt a shock through my body, not heavy, but quite definite, like a, I don't know, sort of reasonable electric shock. I mean, I didn't pass out, but at the same time, I don't remember anything. He must have looked at the others. I have no awareness. Isn't it funny how I'm aware and I can, it's so vivid, and yet then what happened then? I have no idea. The next thing I remember is watching Baba giving darshan. You know, and I was so intrigued. Yeah. Yeah, well, so that was my meeting. I assumed that, yeah, and then the other wonderful occasion, of course, was the interview. Okay, I saw Baba at that distance, and then I saw him after we settled down. After the darshan program, there was a day of settling in, and then Baba came the next day, and yes, I mean I could see Baba. I was moving with the others, but it wasn't until the interview the following day when Baba had the three of us, that's the three Australians, myself, Francis and John Valentine, and again, that was such a beautiful, it was such a wonderful occasion. I was so happy that I can remember coming in through the door of the west, in the room, which is now a museum room in Moorabad, in Upper Moorabad, the retreat. And I remember coming in and Baba gesturing as we approached Baba seated at the end of the room. And I remember Baba gesturing and Erich saying, Francis, you brought me 2 jewels. And it didn't have any effect other than it was that it was a confirmation of come into my home, come and be with me. It was so, it just completed that feeling of, oh, I'll stay here forever. Yeah. And Baba then he gestured for us to sit in the little carpet in front, and then that was the first time I was able to see Baba at a distance of 2 to 3 feet. I mean, I don't know, 2 feet away, we were right there at his feet. And so I could see his face. I could see the incredible change. It was fascinating. I mean, in one way, all you wanted to do was look at this changing landscape of his face. It was so beautiful. And as it were, when he said, "Do you love me?" I had no awareness of Erich. And I mean, I know others have said this so many times, and it's so true that his face is so captivating when it was gesturing, conveying whatever it was, that it wasn't until later, about halfway through the time we were with Baba, when Baba, let me mention it, but the eyes, for the first time I was able to see sort of details of the lips, of the face itself, right? I could see it, and the eyes, and all I could say, as I've got in my book, if I've got it here. We were taken, no. Sorry. Oh, yes, here. The interview particularly gave me the opportunity to see and observe Baba close up, to note the soft, fine hair, the smooth, fresh skin. Despite his age, he looked like a man of 40 to me. He was 60, of course, at that time. Despite the delicate line of the mouth, often hidden beneath the moustache, and his eyes, his eyes, dark and light, sombre yet sparkling, dancing with 1,000 lights, a beautiful rich brown, and a look that saw me as an individual, surface and depth, and simultaneously also saw through me and beyond, giving a sense of seeing not me but the universe. All I can say is that he was so personal, and yet at the same time you had the sense of that he was as though he was looking at a speck. Yeah. He was occupied with something far more vast than this speck of dust that was in front of him. Yeah. Yeah. When he smiled, his whole face shone like the sun, pouring warmth and vitality into one's entire being. Baba put us quickly at ease, smiling affectionately at us, and praising Baba. Oh yes, I'd already mentioned that, praising Baba, Francis for bringing him 2 jewels. Oh yes, many years later, Baba again used the term jewel when he described me as one of the jewels on the fingers of his hand. There were those moments when Baba, I was fortunate that Baba, from certain times, at the end, all right, sorry, I'll go back to the interview. The time when I realised it was Erich interpreting it, but perhaps you all will remember, but let me tell you again, where Baba suddenly looked at John on the other side of Francis. Francis was in the middle, I was on the right, and Baba gestured, "John, who do you take me to be?" And John, who was very new to Baba, very nice person, very nice man, but he was very new and hadn't been much, hadn't been long at all. And he was taken back and then hesitantly sort of blurted out, a perfect master. And Baba so sort of lovingly but quizzically, sort of questioningly sort of said, "How would you know?" and that was so intriguing to me. It's like me saying, I have no doubt in my mind that Baba is God. There's no question. He couldn't be anything else. But don't ask me, I have no idea what I'm saying. Yeah. And Baba, and I'm sort of absorbing this, I'm looking, and suddenly Baba turns to me and looks at me and says, "Who do you take me to be?" And to this day I have no idea where it came from. It just came out completely spontaneously. The most spontaneous thing I ever said to Baba. And that was, "You are my ideal. You are what I would like to be myself." And Baba beamed, so the whole face lit up. And then he turned and gestured. I could still see that gesture, that sort of moment where he pointed, looked at Erich, and I realised that that was the voice. That's the voice. It was Erich. It was so alive, and I can honestly say that it was so natural, and God only knows what he meant, but did you hear that? Sort of that gesture, as though that's a different one, or whatever. Yeah. But there were those moments, of course, the end of the interview, everything was wonderful. It could have gone on forever as far as I was concerned. I would just sit there. But Barbara's obviously gestured to finish, but at the last moment, at the last, Barbara said to me, "Bill, do what Francis tells you." And that was, of course, an extreme 2 years of hardship. I I mean, you might think that's nothing, but hey, it wasn't. It was hard. And he lived with us. Yeah, I mean, it was all right if he was away somewhere. But it was a daily affair. And so, how wonderful it was that, yes.
Did Francis also hear Baba
Oh, yeah.
saying that to you?
Oh, the three of us were there. But how beautiful it was with you that Baba there said to me, he in 2 years later, in 56, he came to the house that we had built. I told you, you've read about that, no doubt. But the thing is that on one occasion, Baba had Francis and I with him, and just Erich. We were in his big room where he slept, and I can remember him sitting on his bed, and we were standing in front of Baba. And it was typical of those occasions when he talked with Francis and I about aspects of the work and so forth. Even on this occasion, he said to the two of us, "I know that you two will stick to me to the end." And so at times when things don't seem to be very difficult and whatnot, I remember that and think, oh well, somehow I'm going to get through this. Good. Baba's words never fail. And on another occasion, too, that was fine. The two of us were sort of together. That was okay. But the other comforting moment of that moment was when he conveyed actually to Joan, my first wife, who told me afterwards that Baba said, "I loved Francis first in Australia and Bill second." And that is typical of the situation. I've always been second.
At least you were in
I
there.
want you to know the tragedy of my life. Number two.
Being number two.
Right. So, what is it, a quarter of an hour? Are there any questions? Anything? I mean, there were so many occasions, so many delightful, so many, but how would I put it? I mean, it's been such a wonderful life but I don't know. I was struck by last night seeing Henry Cauchati. I don't know whether you all saw the film, but I mean, Henry was. I admire the incredible enthusiasm, no, I don't know what to say, but for myself, all I know is that it's been such a wonderful, blessed time, and yet it's also been such a learning time, such a learning period, that it's in a sense that I can't convey how thankful I am to Baba for what he's given me, that learning process, that growing up. I feel so different. Even I can sort of sense that God, I must have been so incredibly ignorant, naive, and everything else. And okay, I still feel like Barbara always referred to me as a lad or a Billy boy. And okay, I'm still a kid. There's no question, none whatsoever. But how fortunate I am, like all of us, that Barbara has all of us in his heart. There's no question. You love Barbara, and Barbara is with you. And he keeps saying to you, yeah, come on, you know, grow up a bit more, face this issue that you have. I won't say wife or husband or children or this or that, but aspects of one's life we all face one way or another, and yet what an opportunity that he gives us that to be aware of it, and at the same time to know it's true, it's a fact that Barbara, do the best you can, but leave it to him, whatever the issue may be. Whatever. It's the development of faith and trust that all I know is that it's there, that it's available, but I've got to keep doing it. And even though I for myself think, oh God, what else is in front of me? And yet at the same time, I know that he is there, that he will be with me in my whatever effort I make to overcome the obstacles that I face in having him more and more within, or in his presence, having him. Okay, Jay.